There are stories that shake a family, and then there are stories that threaten to tear down centuries of reputation. And this one walks right between those two lines, whispering things the palace never wanted to hear and hinting at connections that were never supposed to exist. Most people believe Meghan Markle entered royal life like a blank slate, a Hollywood outsider stepping into a world she barely understood, a modern Cinderella with no idea of what waited behind the Golden Gates. But what if that story was never true? What if Meghan was never an outsider at all? What if she had quietly stepped into that world with more awareness, more access, and more knowledge than anyone suspected? Because, according to sources close to the legal battle surrounding Virginia Roberts, Meghan Markle's name wasn't just floating around royal gossip circles. It appeared in places where words are taken seriously, where silence is strategy, and where knowledge becomes leverage. Not because she was accused of wrongdoing, not because she spoke out, but because she was potentially someone who could speak, someone who could answer questions, someone who had seen things no one thought she had any reason to see. That's when the whispers began. Whispers that Meghan Markle might not have been as unaware or distant from Prince Andrew's stormy situation as people believed. Whispers that she may have had a closer connection to those events and individuals than even Harry knew. At first, people brushed it off as rumor, a stretch, an overreach. But then something changed. Legal experts began mentioning her not as a spectator, but as a possible witness. They claimed she had proximity, knowledge, and access. Not just after marrying Harry, long before that. Because according to certain claims, Meghan was allegedly in contact with Virginia Roberts. Not loosely, not casually, but in a way that raised eyebrows, in a way that suggested intention. She was allegedly staying in touch with someone at the center of one of the most controversial royal scandals of the last decade. And that connection didn't vanish when headlines did, it stayed. Growing in significance, feeding a quiet unease across certain royal walls. Why would Meghan, a rising actress with no defined royal ties, stay in contact with someone deeply tied to accusations, legal battles, and Prince Andrew's very public downfall? That question lingers because if that claim is true, then Meghan wasn't approaching royal life from the outside. She was already near its most guarded fire. She was allegedly close to someone whose story held consequences. Someone whose words could destroy legacies. Someone whose testimony could reshape history. And that is why lawyers like David Boies allegedly considered Meghan a possible key witness. Not because she had to speak, but because she potentially could. And if she did, what would she reveal? He allegedly listed 3 reasons she could be subpoenaed. First, Meghan now lives in the United States, which means she has no royal shield, no diplomatic protection, and no palace barrier. Second, she was believed to have had real proximity, not rumors, not guesses, but direct or indirect exposure to Prince Andrew and royal circles long before the public realized. And third, she is known by many as someone who remembers things, stores details, and speaks only when necessary. Someone who deals in information, not gossip. That makes her words dangerous, if ever spoken under oath. But that wasn't the only thing. The deeper people looked into Meghan's timeline, the more strange little overlaps they began finding. Things that suddenly didn't look accidental. Things that seemed less like coincidence and more like connection. Meghan told the world she knew nothing of royal life before Harry. She said she never Googled him, didn't research the family, didn't even understand how royalty worked. But sources began telling a different story, one that claimed Meghan already knew Sarah Ferguson, Prince Andrew's ex-wife, long before she met Harry. Not only that, but she was allegedly seen alongside Princess Eugenie in social circles even before being introduced to Harry. The same Princess Eugenie who is Prince Andrew's daughter. Suddenly, the royal world didn't look so distant from Meghan after all. Soho House, that private elite sanctuary designed to protect secrets, reportedly became one of the places where these interactions happened. No paparazzi, no tabloids, no public record. The perfect place to build connections without anyone asking questions. But the most striking detail? The claim that Princess Eugenie allegedly gave Meghan access to Harry's private Instagram account before they officially met. That matters because private accounts don't show polished images curated for the public. They show personality, humor, interests, behaviors, unfiltered reality. Which means Meghan could have known exactly who Harry was before Harry ever truly met her. That isn't naivety. That looks like strategy. And if Eugenie gave Meghan that access, then those connections weren't accidental. They were real, they were early, and they were closer to Prince Andrew's sphere than anyone wanted to admit. But it goes deeper. According to quietly circulating accounts, there was a wedding in Jamaica. Harry was there, Eugenie was there, Fergie was there, Prince Andrew was there, and Meghan? Allegedly there too. Except in the released photos, she mysteriously wasn't. No picture, no proof. But witnesses claimed she was. And not just there, she reportedly flew on a private jet while Harry flew economy. Why would Meghan, before her official royal connection, have access to private travel while a prince traveled commercially? Why hide her presence? Why control what was seen? Because if Meghan was indeed there, near Andrew and his circle, before any public knowledge, then her proximity to the scandal wasn't distant or accidental. It was real. And it changes everything. The more these details aligned, the more people began to realize something quietly unsettling. Meghan Markle wasn't just entering the royal world with dreams and innocence. She may have walked in with knowledge, possibly even information. And in the royal world, information is power. Because in a family built on tradition, hierarchy, and silence, nothing is more threatening than someone who knows too much and doesn't need to speak to prove it. Meghan has often been described as someone who observes more than she comments, someone who listens more than she responds, someone who stores information until the moment it matters. If she was indeed near Prince Andrew's controversies through Virginia Roberts, through Eugenie, through private events, then what she may have heard, seen, or simply understood could make her one of the most unintentionally powerful figures in recent royal history. And that is why the palace reportedly tenses every time rumors of her speaking surface, because if Meghan ever speaks under oath, it wouldn't just affect Andrew. It wouldn't just affect Harry. It wouldn't just affect the royal image. It could touch names that never thought they would be dragged into the light. Sarah Ferguson, Princess Eugenie, King Charles, even the institution itself. Meghan doesn't have to accuse, she doesn't have to expose. All she would have to do is speak. Testimony isn't gossip, it isn't rumor, it becomes record. And record becomes history. That's why some people say the palace doesn't fear Meghan because she left. They fear what she took with her, because knowledge is more powerful than any title. And some storms don't happen in the spotlight, they wait. And one day, if the door of silence ever opens, it won't just be Andrew who trembles. It will be every name that once stood beside him, believing their walls could keep the truth out. But sometimes, the truth walks in wearing a smile, a title, and a crown.